Every single morning, millions of older adults lace up their sneakers and head out for a walk. For decades, the standard medical advice has been the same. Walking is the ultimate exercise for structural longevity. It's accessible, gentle on the joints, and keeps your heart healthy.
But if we look closely at the biological realities of aging, specifically muscle wasting and balance degradation, we uncover a harsh truth. Walking, while beneficial, is simply not enough to safeguard your physical independence. There is a critical breakdown between just moving around and actually maintaining strength. And that exact gap is where physical frailty quietly takes root.
One of the most dangerous myths I see in my work is the assumption that a daily stroll preserves your muscle framework. Anatomically, this is a misconception.
Electromyography tests, which track real-time muscle fiber activation, show a startling reality regarding the gluteus maximus, the primary muscle group responsible for human stability. When walking on a flat surface, this vital muscle is recruited at a mere 32% of its actual potential. This means during your primary form of exercise, nearly 2/3 of your body's main stabilizer remains completely offline. Over time, this neglect triggers a neurological condition known as gluteal amnesia. Essentially, your brain disconnects from these muscles because they are never pushed past a baseline threshold. The consequence isn't just loss of muscle shape, it's the erosion of the structural scaffolding that keeps your pelvis stable and your posture secure.
This is why we constantly see active seniors, people who walk miles every single day, suddenly struggle to stand up from a deep armchair or feel incredibly unstable when walking on grass. Walking is a repetitive, linear movement. It does nothing to train lateral stability or reactive power. As the decades pass, if we don't actively stimulate our fast-twitch muscle fibers, they degenerate at a drastically accelerated rate compared to endurance fibers. Fortunately, there is a precise movement protocol designed to awaken these dormant zones, reverse muscle wasting, and rebuild lower body structural integrity. One exercise in particular, which I'll reveal shortly, is often the single deciding factor in whether someone can continue living independently into their 80s and 90s. Before we dive into the specific biomechanics of these exercises, I'd love to connect with you. Please take a quick second to leave a comment below with your name, your age, and where you are tuning in from. I read through these messages personally, and it's genuinely inspiring to see a global community of proactive adults taking control of their longevity. If you find today's insights valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so we can keep this vital conversation going. Let's start fixing this muscular deficit with an exercise that directly forces vertical force through the hip joint, the controlled step-up. It might look like a basic movement, essentially stepping onto a platform. But in a clinical setting, your mastery of the step-up is a definitive biomarker for life expectancy and fall prevention. When walking forward, momentum does most of the heavy lifting. But when stepping upward, you must fight gravity using the isolated power of a single leg. This demands a level of knee and hip stabilization that flat walking can never replicate. Research from the University of Florida demonstrated that incorporating this specific movement increased single-leg power by over 25% in older individuals. The secret lies not in how high you step, but in your level of control. We want to retrain the central nervous system to safely balance your entire body weight on one leg. Pressing down firmly through your heel sends a high-impact signal to both bone and muscle,
forcing them to adapt.
You are proving to your body that it still requires vertical power. This process reinforces bone density in the femoral neck, the most common site for dangerous hip fractures, while forcing the glutes to fire entirely.
Neglecting this vertical power eventually makes stairs, curbs, and public transit unsafe, shrinking your world to flat floors only. Once we establish vertical power, we have to tackle posture and hip extension. Due to hours spent sitting, our bodies naturally begin to hunch inward over time. Shoulders round forward and the hips remain chronically bent. This causes severe mechanical tightening in the front hip flexors. Through a neurological process called reciprocal inhibition, when these front muscles become chronically tight, they send a chemical signal telling the opposing muscles, your glutes, to turn off and stay relaxed. This is a recipe for structural disaster. It creates the classic senior shuffle, where your stride shortens because your leg can no longer extend cleanly behind you. To reverse this, we implement the standing glute kickback. This isn't a mindless leg lift. It is a neurological system reset. By standing tall and extending the leg straight backward without bending your lower spine, you force the glute to contract against that front side tightness. This unlocks the natural range of motion in the hip, giving you a longer, more confident stride. It also stops the lower back from overworking during movement, which is the root cause of most unexplained lumbar pain in adults over 60. This profound link between glute weakness and lower back strain brings us down to the floor or a firm mattress for the glute bridge. This is arguably the most restorative movement available for the aging spine. A massive percentage of my patients suffer from chronic back issues, not due to a weak back, but because their glutes are effectively asleep. When your glutes fail to stabilize the pelvis, your lower back muscles are forced into overdrive just to keep you upright. The glute bridge corrects this faulty firing sequence. By lying flat on your back and raising your hips, you eliminate the challenge of balance entirely, allowing your brain to focus 100% on muscular contraction. This is a safe, closed-chain exercise that takes the pressure off your spine while reinforcing the entire posterior chain. Clinical metrics show a massive drop in chronic back pain once this exercise is introduced, because it retrains the brain to use the hips as the primary engine of movement, saving the spinal vertebrae from unnecessary wear and tear. However, moving forward and backward is only half the battle. We must prioritize lateral stability, which is controlled by the gluteus medius and minimus, the muscles resting on the sides of your hips. Think of these as the invisible lifesavers that stop you from falling sideways. Statistically, lateral falls are the absolute most dangerous for seniors because the impact lands directly on the trochanter of the femur. Standard walking does virtually nothing to condition these lateral muscles. That is why we utilize seated band abductions. By sitting down and pushing your knees outward against a resistance band, you isolate these critical lateral stabilizers with zero fall risk. While the movement feels small, hip adductor strength is actually the #1 statistical predictor of whether you can recover your balance during a stumble. When you trip, your lateral hip must fire instantly to push your leg out wide and catch your weight. If these muscles are weak, that reflex is simply too slow to stop your momentum. Strengthening them widens your functional base of support, ensuring your pelvis stays perfectly level even when you are temporarily balanced on one foot, eliminating what clinicians call the Trendelenburg gait. This progression from basic activation to side stability brings us to the most complex yet vital movement for long-term functional autonomy, the modified split squat. In traditional fitness, people call this a Bulgarian split squat, a title that sounds far too intense and athletic. For our goals, we view it simply as a supported single-leg stand. The science behind this exercise addresses asymmetry. Virtually no one is perfectly symmetrical. We all rely more on one dominant leg. Over several decades, this muscular imbalance widens drastically. When you stand up from a toilet or climb stairs using both limbs, your dominant side automatically compensates for the weaker side, hiding the underlying deficit. This pattern continues until the strong leg becomes injured or exhausted, and suddenly you realize you can no longer support your own weight. The split squat eliminates this compensation entirely. By resting one foot behind you on a support and lowering your weight onto the front leg, you force that single limb to manage the entire burden of balance and strength. This heavily challenges proprioception, your brain's ability to map where your body is in space, which naturally fades with age. This single movement unifies everything we've built: the vertical power of the step-up, the hip opening of the kickback, and the side stability of the abduction. It effectively bulletproofs your lower joints by making sure each leg is fully capable of carrying your body weight independently. When I see an individual in their 70s master this movement, even with a minimal depth, I know their statistical risk of a life-altering fall has plummeted. They aren't just gaining muscle, they are building neurological trust in their own body. Ultimately, the goal of blending these 5 movements — step-ups, kickbacks, bridges, abductions, and split squats — isn't to turn you into a competitive athlete. The goal is a complete shift in how you view exercise after the age of 60. We have to discard the outdated idea that movement is just about burning calories or checking a cardiovascular box. At this stage of your journey, targeted exercise is a direct prescription for personal autonomy. It is about locking in your ability to perform the activities of daily living without needing someone else's help. Relying purely on walking protects your cardiovascular health, which is vital, but it leaves your structural health completely unprotected. Fortunately, the human body remains incredibly adaptive, no matter your age. Science used to assume that muscle wasting was an unstoppable, one-way street. We now know that thanks to neuroplasticity and the eternal responsiveness of skeletal tissue, you can reclaim your strength well into your 80s and 90s. But it requires deliberate intent. It requires practicing movements that feel slightly challenging in a safe, controlled setting, so you are fully prepared for the unpredictable setting of the real world. In this arena, consistency is your ultimate currency. You don't need extreme intensity. You need regular frequency and precise form. By weaving these targeted actions into your weekly life, you are doing far more than working out. You are actively designing a future where you remain the undisputed pilot of your own life, moving forward with absolute certainty, stability, and strength.